Hello everyone, I'm your Empress Harmony, and we are back with yet another hero chopping block. However, before we get started, and before we get into the meat of anything, I do want to mention that this video will be the last video in which I use a bot match to showcase the hero. While I've been using bot matches to practice builds and items and test out various things, I have come to realize that it is not exactly the best show of the hero while we discuss their ins and outs and the discussion parts of the videos. So from going forward, we will be using unranked, which is a huge leap, but I'll talk more about that at the end. Let's get back into what we all came here for, and that is the discussion of BroodMother. BroodMother is a melee agility hero tagged Carry, Pusher, Escape, and Nuker. This mother plays no games when you tread into her territory. Let's see what she uses to devour her enemies and teach them not to with her children. Her first ability is called Spawn Spiderlings. Brood injects her young into an enemy unit. If the unit is killed, spiderlings will hatch while under this ability. It inflicts medium magical damage. Her second ability, Spin Web, spins a large web that renders Brood invisible, gives free movement, and boosts her health regen. FYI, taking damage reveals Brood, disables the free movement, and has the move speed bonus. BroodMother's third ability, Incapacitating Bite, allows BroodMother to inflict a 2-second slow and gives the affected unit a chance to miss. FYI, this is a passive that spins webs around the enemy and makes it harder for them to land a hit. For her fourth, final, and ultimate ability, Insatiable Hunger, Brood is driven mad with bloodlust. It's an ultimate that can't be dispelled. It increases her attack damage and gives her lifesteal for its 14-second duration. Run, enemies, run. Alright, now onto the hot topic into the room. The MILF you don't want to MILF. The mother of all mothers. Okay, I'm done with the bad jokes. Anyone who knows me knows I have an obsession with deadly venomous bugs. In video games only, of course. I don't do with the whole bug thing in real life. Nah, bruh, you getting raid. Anyway, though. So BroodMother for me felt really natural to play, and just to pick up in general. What wasn't natural was being thrown into the off lane. I am a terrible off laner. In my history of MOBAs, off lane has probably been one of my top worst lanes. That I'll get into more detail later, but so far Brood is probably one of the hardest heroes I've played. Of the 6 in total now, 6 heroes that I've played so far, she is one of the hardest. It's not because of her kit, but rather the counters that exist. Either way, Brood is an interesting mix that results in what can be found in other games as a specialist. You'll see why when we, ranch around to the skills. Starting with Spawn Spiderlings, that skill has 2 awesome uses. The primary function is to build an army of spiderlings. This skill alone is what makes her an excellent pusher. Unfortunately, be aware that spiderlings are one-shots to enemy heroes and do grant experience, so you have to try not to send them to their death unless you're suiciding for a tower. Even that's really risky because you have the chance of having a strong AoE hero come in, one-shot the spiders, and boom, you basically just fed them your own children. That's freaking sick. Sick if you do that. But, sometimes a tower is worth it, but only if you know that you have enough spiderlings to knock it down along with your minions. The secondary function is as a nuking range skill. It does significant enough damage to snipe down an enemy and spawn spiderlings in the process. And sometimes, even though you don't, the damage is enough to chunk the hero just enough for an ally to come in and get that last hit. Even if you don't get to spawn the spiderlings, which by the time the ally may come in, the window for spawning spiderlings might be over, but at the very least they can, secure that kill. But, in this one skill lies her nuker and her pusher tag. The ability to spawn these mass amount of spiderlings if you're good on last hitting and the skill cooldown is enough and you're able to keep your mana up. You can spawn a huge wave of spiderlings, send them into one lane, jump over to another lane, and spawn more spiderlings in that lane and push them in that lane. And the skill has a tremendous use. And then again, it's also a nuke. What more could you want out of a I guess you could say a primary skill? Moving along, we've got Spin Web, which can be considered another pushing tool, as well as her primary escape/survival tool. With Spin Web, you can effectively secure an area for yourself and spiderlings to, of course, bunker down and hide in case, the enemy comes running through your lane. And more often than not, they don't carry wards. They don't drop wards. They're not smart enough to drop wards and try to find you. And then on top of that, you can hide, your massive spiderling army. You can hide in these webs and then take a hero by surprise. Especially if they're not an AoE-based hero, you have the advantage. You can basically overrun them with your spiderlings right there. They could be standing in the midst of your army and not even know, as long as they're within bounds of your web. The only weakness to this tactic is, of course, sentry wards or gem, or heroes with some type of track or reveal. On top of that, you also have heroes who don't have a targeted AoE, meaning that they could just use it around them, and chances are they'll hit you and kill all your spiderlings in the process. So you really got to be careful with that if you're going to try to do that type of tactic. Another thing might be to have an ally hero come in and jump on them first, and then you come out of your webbing stealth and, aid in the jumping, if that makes any sense. On top of that, the bonus health regen is enough to keep her in lane and reduce dependency on healing items. The real cool use is being able to cross over terrain such as like ledges and trees. That makes it super easy to escape lethal situations. Thus, we have our escape tag here. A lot of heroes can't get over ledges or, run directly into the tree line. But with web, as long as you have your web there, you basically can just beeline into the trees, and while your enemies have to kind of path around the trees and do all that, but you can just web the trees, go in, and TP the hell out. If the situation calls for it. I had a couple of situations, both in unranked and bot matches, where I didn't think to do that, and it's really something you got to do. That's why you web up a lane. With BroodMother, the goal is to get in a lane and just stay there. Unless you get pushed out, or if you're smart enough. If you're not, I don't want to say smart enough because people are smart. But if you're skilled and talented enough to split push, you put half your max count of webs in one lane, you put the other half in another lane, and you just TP back and forth between the lanes. And it'd be hard, unless the enemy is warding, it'd be really hard for them to figure out, okay, which lane is BroodMother in currently. If you combo with your first skill properly, you can have two groups of spiderlings pushing both lanes, and they're still trying to guess where is the main BroodMother at, because all we're seeing is spiderlings. Her next two skills I have to talk about together. Remember the carry tag that she has? This is where it comes into play. Incapacitating Bite, her passive, increases the target's chance to miss for 2 seconds. Layer that with an evasion item, and you should have minimal damage 1v1. In a 1v1 situation, as long as your incapacitating bite is at least level 2 or 3, I want to say, and you might have an evasion item such as I don't know, butterfly or something that gives you a nice chunk of evasion, you should be able to win a one-on-one fight. As soon as you ult, it's game over for most people, unless they have like a BKB or something, and they can pretty much ignore your damage or something. Or the hero is just really tanky in general. But, throw in her ultimate, like I said, which is Insatiable Hunger, and it gives her lifesteal plus the extra damage. It's a wrap for any non-tanky hero you face. That lifesteal on her ultimate is like, layer it on top of like a Morbid Mask or something, or a Vladimir's if nobody else on your team has built it yet, and oh my god, you can't die 1v1. It's almost impossible. Even worse if they try. I almost lost my train of thought. Even worse, if they tried to run, they'd be afflicted with a 2-second slow, so they wouldn't be able to get far enough from you before you're back on them again. That also comes from the slow. Also comes from her brain farting everywhere. Her incapacitating bite. These two skills make her a strong 1v1 carry against non-tanky heroes. And I say non-tanky heroes because oftentimes the tanky ones will build even more tanky, meaning that you need a team to take them down. But if you catch a squishy hero such as the support, or maybe the enemy team carry by itself, you can't lose against them unless the whole team rotates on you. And even then, I suggest fighting inside your webs. That way if you get stunned or something, you go invisible while you're inside your web and you're not taking any action. Only problem is that, again, if they have AoEs, they'd still be able to nuke you while you're in stealth, so you gotta kind of be wary of that. Now, when we couple her skills together, what lane do you see? If off lane, you're in good hands, as this is the preferred lane for Brood. This is due to the number of reasons, such as proximity to the bounty rune, her ability to, again, lock down a lane with her webs, and force the carry support duo to watch where they tread, or risk getting ran over by these massive amount of spiderlings. Especially if you're good at positioning with BroodMother, you can easily get yourself behind the support, take out the support, go back into stealth, and now your carry is without their support, so your team can easily rotate on them and, force them to kind of fight under tower, or your team can tower dive and, whatnot. You put them in a bad situation. So, this lane, again, personally for me, this lane is where I am the worst. Off lane is my weakest lane. I suck there. And again, it's so easy for people to kind of counter Brood here, because oftentimes the support will be carrying wards. Wards save lives. I don't think I need to stress that enough. Or if they're really smart, they'll carry something like Pipe, or Dust of Appearance, or Gem of Insight, or Gem of... I forget the damn name of the... You know what I mean, the gem. And again, AoE heroes, or heroes with a taunt, if they're in this lane, it could spell bad news for you. So for me, I really have to work on my off lane, but it's a work in progress for me personally. But for BroodMother, off lane is where she shines the most. Ooh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Brood's survival depends on her webs. If the enemy is smartly warding and tree chopping, because you can actually hide in the like I mentioned earlier with her spin web, how you can just web an entire forest and then run in. If the enemy is chopping down trees and freeing up these escape routes, you're gonna have you're not gonna have much room to hide. Also, it's easy to be rotated upon and crushed, or having your powerful push denied, because often a strong enemy hero with AoE will rotate on you, and you heard me mention that many times already. If a strong AoE hero such as a Razor or something rotates on you, you're going to be in trouble. Especially if you're trying to do a big push and the enemy team notices that, they will rotate on you. And if you're not smart enough to look at your map, or if you yourself as BroodMother haven't warded, which you should, to avoid this exact situation, you're going to get rotated upon, you're going to get pushed out of lane, or you're going to get killed in the process. One of the two is going to happen if you don't manage to see it before it happens, or escape before it happens. Or even worse, if you don't manage to have a successful push before it happens. Moving on through the lanes, we go to mid lane. Here is a no-no. For me, as much trouble as I have as off lane, I'd much rather off lane than mid lane. Mid lane is where the casters go, for the most part, and 90% of the time, the casters have powerful AoEs, and can hit you in stealth, or erase all your babies in one go. Also, because of mid lane chaos, you'll be rotated upon faster than mid can kill a roach. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say mid? Mid is on my mind. Faster than raid can kill a roach. And raid kills on contact, mind you. Now, scurrying down to safe lane, here Brood can fulfill being support, as she can surprise and deny the enemy. She can, deny the enemy off laner any farm by forcing them to buy wards, or in general force them to blow region items by constantly harassing them from invisibility. Thus, in tandem with her lane partner, pretty much demolish a lane. If you've already got a support and a carry and an off lane and a mid lane, Jungle Brood is an option. And a strong one at that. I personally believe in Jungle Brood. I think it is a very strong option. Personally, it's my favorite role for her. And because of the, I follow the out of sight, out of mind rule. A Jungle Brood is an unpredictable brood. This is because enemies will look for, they'll look for you in lane, but find you're not there, thus meaning they will be tempted to venture into and ward your jungle. This is where you catch them, especially if they're silly enough to wander in solo. By starting out in jungle, you ensure safe farm, which allows you to grow your pushing power in peace, then randomly pop out into lanes to gank or push with an army. When I start in the jungle, it's always with, oh god, my throat. It's always with the jungler must-haves, Tango and an Iron Claw, and putting my first skill point into Spin Web. I farm until I'm around, I want to say 6-ish with my ultimate, ready and packing a few items such as a soul ring for the mana regen, which I use to keep my mana up, because Spin Web, I can't English, I'm sorry. Spin Web provides a good chunk of HP regen to BroodMother, so by spamming, you can pretty much spam Soul Ring to get your mana back because you'll regenerate it really, really fast. Phase Boots is a good boot choice, but recently I prefer the Power Treads. Power Treads are much better in the current, I want to say, state of the game. I don't want to say meta. But for her, personally, Power Treads are the must-have because of that extra attack speed early game. But Phase Boots is another good choice. You still get a little bit of, I believe you still get attack speed. You get movement speed when not on a web, and you activate the item itself, which you should always try to stick near or, I'm trying to, find my words, but, my brain is, right, you should always stick onto or near a web, just because you get that extra, you get that, you're able to climb over terrain, and on top of that, why are you off your web? It's kind of your place of, livelihood. Without it, you're kind of dead. Unless you're rotating into a team fight, in which case it's a little deadly, but hopefully you didn't rotate too late, but that's just me. And usually, Phase Boots is really good because you have a huge army of spiderlings, and it's easy for them to body block you. So with Phase Boots, you kind of activate Phase Boots, you walk through them, you get to your target, and then they have to reposition, and usually they body block the enemy for you. I also grab a Stout Shield because jungle creeps tend to be a little rough, and in general, it can help you survive an otherwise lethal blow. The damage reduction might not be huge, but it's enough for it to be a good early game item. Later on, of course, you want to grab your Orchid of Malevolence. Not only does its silence allow you to engage on a target, but also the extra intelligence and mana regen ensure that you can nuke a runaway on top of the extra 30 damage it provides. If I'm still feeling too squishy, I usually shoot for a BKB, which you should always, I feel like it should be like your third item. It should be your third item to build on BroodMother because of the aforementioned things that can happen, being rotated upon, AoE heroes, yada yada yada. BKB will save your life. I attest to it. Hallelujah. Praise Zeus on high. Especially if you're rotating into a team fight and you're not the type of brood to just push and push and push her lane, and you're actually rotating into team fights, you want a BKB. You want to be able to scurry into a fight, BKB, ult, and be able to take out multiple enemies, because by the time one enemy's dead, you still got maybe about anywhere from 6 to 8 seconds left on your ult to be able to take out another enemy, spray a web, hide, wait for somebody to come in and clean up. Let's see. Also, again, I can't stress enough that people will focus a Brood. So BKB will be your ticket to escape. If I'm looking for more damage, I grab an Echo Saber because it makes me a bit beefier, and the double attack passive means I can chew through towers and heroes that much faster and harder. It's basically like having a Weaver's passive, but for melee, and being able to chew down again. BroodMother's whole idea, her whole kit, surrounds being able to mow down lanes, mow down objectives. Echo Saber will help you with that, having the double attack, especially with your incapacitating bite passive. There's no escaping you. Every time you're attacking twice, that's applying a 2-second slow, a 2-second, kind of a 2-second blind, so to speak. You know, you're making it harder for the enemy to not counter you, but harder for a single enemy to face you. It is death. The final item worth mentioning that I like to build on her regardless of lane is a Monkey King bar. Because the only CC Brood has is a slow. So having a bash and true strike allows her to kill enemy heroes and get away with minimal damage. And the bash gives her a chance to shut down any enemy TP attempts. Remember, this isn't an item build, so it's just loose items I found to work super well on her. As always, before I close out, recommendations, I implore Brood to purchase wards, especially as an offlane / jungler. Bottle is a good investment if you're often able to snag your river runes, or even magic wand for early game stat boost and in a pinch healing, because enemies, especially if an enemy is farming inside the range of one of your webs, you're able to sit there and stealth and watch and basically be near them when they're casting abilities, giving your magic wand, magic stick charges. So it's a really good item to have on you. So in closing out this discussion section, I want to say that Brood is one of the strongest split pushers, but requires careful planning. Which lanes are you going to split? Can you TP fast enough or not? Where is a team fight going to take place, or even is the enemy warding lanes? It's really easy to get distracted pushing and not notice an incoming gank, or if your team needs you for a fight. On Brood should not be afraid to constantly change lanes. If you cannot push one fully, slow pushing is just as effective as hard pushing. Should you die before spiderlings, bring them to safety, or risk leaving snacks out for the enemy heroes. I can't stress that enough. I remember my first unranked game as Brood where I thought I'd be able to kill an enemy with my spiderlings, but I didn't have the talent points for them. And basically I just wound up feeding the enemy, and one of my teammates, it was kind of in a nice, not so nice way, was like, don't feed them. If you die as Brood, get your spiderlings away and use them to farm. So keep that in mind. If you as BroodMother die but your spiderlings are still alive, take them to the nearest spiderweb. Get them inside the jungle. Protect them. So with that, we'll move on to the conclusion. Alright guys, so we're finally at the conclusion, and I just want to thank you all for sitting through it thus far. We're almost done. Overall, BroodMother is a wonderful addition to a team who needs a full-forced pusher. Her ability to provide early game lane pressure from the jungle or an actual lane can take unsuspecting enemy teams by surprise. An experienced Brood excels at split pushing, can overwhelm and kill lane targets early game, can farm both ally and enemy jungles to deprive enemies of farm, and can successfully rotate in and out of team fights to push lanes. However, be aware that Brood can easily be bursted down if you stop paying attention or mismanage your pushes. This is because she lacks global presence, itemizing incorrectly leads to damage fall off, focusing too much on pushing forces the team to 4v5, and failure to recognize counters will lead to many, many deaths. All in all, playing Brood requires forethought, knowing when to hard push, when to split push, when to slow push, when to vanish from the map entirely to surprise enemies in a team fight. And most of all, you have to be mindful of your spiderling use, because in large quantities, you can wind up feeding the enemy and working against your team. A strong brood is ruthless in her pushing and singling out priority targets. Hope you enjoy draining your enemy's innards as BroodMother. Next time, we find out flesh is but a garment.